A man can spend 19 years building a house, and his own daughter can burn it down in under 4 minutes, and not even break a sweat doing it. I didn't know that yet. Not when I parked my truck outside that diner. I just knew it was Wednesday, and Wednesdays meant lunch with my girl. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get comfortable and keep this in mind. The people in these stories had every chance to behave themselves. They just chose wrong. Hit that like button and drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to love it here. My name is James Wheeler. I'm 48 years old. I work operations and risk management for a logistics outfit off I-30, and I live in Garland, Texas. I drive a 2017 Chevy Silverado with 140,000 miles on it, and I change my own oil, because paying somebody $80 to do something I can do in my driveway for $22 in parts has always struck me as a special kind of insanity. That Wednesday in late August, the Texas heat was sitting on Garland like a wet towel, and I'd taken an early lunch to drive 20 minutes to a little diner on Beltline Road called the Original Pancake Spot. Cracked vinyl booths, bottomless coffee, and a chicken fried steak that'll put you in a food coma if you're not careful. Emma used to love that place when she was a kid. She'd order the kolaches and stack the powdered sugar packets like poker chips while we waited. She was home for a few days before flying back out to school, and she'd texted me Sunday, "Can we grab lunch Wednesday? Need to talk to you about something." Probably money for books, I thought. Or she wants to talk about a boy. Either way, I'll buy the lunch and listen. I got there first. I always get there first. I ordered my coffee black and watched the door. Emma walked in 11 minutes late. In sunglasses she didn't take off right away, scrolling her phone before she even sat down. 19 years old. My daughter, dressed like she'd stepped out of a magazine I couldn't afford to be in. "Hey kiddo," I said, standing halfway up like I always do. "You want the usual? I already ordered you a sweet tea." She didn't hug me. She slid into the booth across from me, set her phone face down, which should have told me something, but didn't, and pulled a folded packet of papers out of her bag. She's got something on her mind, I thought. Probably nervous about something. Let her get to it. "Dad, I need you to sign something." No hello. No how's work. Straight to business. I figured it was a school form, maybe something for her meal plan, or a parking permit paperwork colleges love to bury you in. "Sure, baby girl. What is it?" She slid the packet across the table. I picked it up, still half smiling, reaching for my reading glasses in my shirt pocket. The crest. Luxury student residences. Rooftop infinity pool. 24-hour concierge. In-unit washer-dryer. Granite countertops. A resort-style fitness experience. $3,200 a month. I read it twice because I figured I was misreading a zero somewhere. "Emma," I said slowly, This can't be right. $3,200 a month? For an apartment?" "It's not just an apartment, Dad. It's the place. Everybody who's anybody lives there. Everybody who's anybody." I set my coffee down carefully, like it might give me away if I gripped it too hard. "Honey, I'm already covering your dorm and your meal plan for the year. This is I flipped to the second page. "This needs a cosigner making 6 times the rent. That's almost $230,000 a year in income for them to even consider me. So cosign it." I don't make that. Not even close. And even if I did, why do you need this? You've got a perfectly good dorm room already paid for." She rolled her eyes behind those sunglasses, finally pushing them up onto her head. And for 1 second, I saw my little girl in there. Then, it was gone. She looked down at the lease packet, then back up at me. I saw her fingers curl around the edge of the paper, like she was about to fold it up and slide it back across the table. She hesitated. Just a beat. For half a second, I thought she might put it away entirely, say something else, something that sounded like the daughter I used to know. Then her jaw tightened, and she pushed it toward me like it was a dare. "The dorms are embarrassing, Dad. Shared bathrooms. No AC half the time. I'm not living like that for 4 years. You lived like that for 1 semester just fine." "Yeah, because I didn't know there was something better." The waitress came by to refill my coffee. I waited until she left, partly to collect myself, partly because some habits, staying calm, staying measured, don't switch off even when your stomach's doing something ugly. "Emma, I love you. I do. But I can't sign this. It's not that I don't want to. It's that I can't. Your tuition is already stretching me thin as it is. This isn't a need, baby. This is a want. A big one. Stay calm. She's 19. She doesn't understand what 6 figures of risk looks like yet. You can't, or you won't. Both, if I'm honest. That's when her face changed. I want to tell you I saw it coming, but I didn't. 8 years of quiet conditioning doesn't show up on a face until the moment it decides to. Unbelievable. She said it flat like she'd rehearsed it. This is exactly why Mom left you. Emma, no, seriously. You're so scared of spending $1 you don't even know how to live. You want me crammed into some dorm with strangers. Anything to avoid actually investing in something. I've paid over $50,000 for your freshman year alone, Emma. Out of pocket. Every cent of it. Luke, Mom's husband, doesn't even blink at $3,000 a month. He told me this morning he'd sign it himself if you said no. He's already a real man, a winner. He builds things. He doesn't sit around clipping coupons calling it financial responsibility. I sat there. Just sat there. 19 years. I thought about every lunch I packed her from kindergarten through senior year. I thought about staying up till 1 a.m. helping her with a chemistry project freshman year of high school, while her mother was at a girls' trip in Cabo. None of it showed up in her face. Not 1 ounce. She stood up, grabbed her bag, left the lease packet sitting there like trash. Enjoy your little lonely life, James. James. Not Dad. James. She walked out, and through the window I watched her climb into a black Mercedes SUV idling at the curb. Luke Bentley behind the wheel in a sport coat in 98-degree heat, like he dressed for a photo shoot instead of picking up a teenager from lunch. He looked through the glass at me, right at me, and gave this small, satisfied nod. Like he'd won something. He doesn't even know what he thinks he's won. I sat in that booth for a long time. The waitress came by twice to check on me, and both times I told her I was fine, just finishing my coffee. The check sat there with her untouched sweet tea and a half-eaten plate of eggs going cold. I want to tell you I cried. I didn't. I want to tell you I got angry, slammed the table, made a scene. I didn't do that either. What I felt was stranger than both of those things. It was quiet, cold, clear, like the moment right before a windshield cracks when you hear that first thin sound and you already know, before you see it spread, that something's about to break in a way you can't undo. 19 years of being the foundation, I thought, and she just told me the foundation is an embarrassment. I paid the check. I left a good tip, because none of this was the waitress's fault, and I drove home with the windows down, not playing the radio, just thinking. By the time I pulled into my driveway in Garland, I'd already made a decision. I didn't know yet exactly what it would look like, but I knew where it would start. In my hallway closet on the top shelf behind a box of Christmas lights, there was a gray filing cabinet I hadn't opened in almost 8 years. It had a copy of my divorce decree in it, and buried in page 11, in language I remembered drafting careful arguments over with my lawyer back when Emma was 11 years old and I was too proud and too hurt to fight dirty. There was a clause I hadn't thought about once since the ink dried. I was about to think about it a whole lot more. There's a sentence buried on page 11 of my divorce decree that I drafted 8 years ago in a fog of grief and pride, and I'd forgotten it existed, until the day my own daughter handed me a reason to remember it. Funny how the law works. You write something down in your worst moment, thinking it'll never matter. Then one Wednesday afternoon, it becomes the only thing that matters. I got home from the diner that day and didn't turn on the TV, didn't grab a beer. I went straight to the hallway closet, pulled down that gray filing cabinet from behind the Christmas lights, and set it on my kitchen table like it was a bomb I needed to defuse carefully. I hadn't touched the divorce paperwork since Emma was 11. Back then, my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Paula Castillo, who I'd found through a coworker, had pushed hard for a clause most fathers don't even think to ask for. I remember sitting across from her numb, still convincing myself Kara would come to her senses. James, Paula had said, you need to protect yourself for the long haul, not just now, 10 years from now. I'd waved her off mostly. I'll pay whatever it takes for my daughter, I told her. I don't need a cap. She put it in anyway. I found it on page 11, under the education provision. Father's contribution to post-secondary education shall be capped at the equivalent cost of attendance at the state's flagship public institution, currently Texas A&M University, inclusive of tuition fees, and standard room and board. I read it 3 times. Texas A&M's full cost of attendance, in-state, was around $11,000 a year. I pulled up my bank statements on my laptop right there at the kitchen table, my coffee going cold beside the keyboard, and did the math I'd been too proud to do for 2 years. Emma had chosen an out-of-state private university on the West Coast. Sticker price, $52,000 annually. Because of the flagship cap, my legal obligation was done at $11,000. I'd been voluntarily covering the remaining $41,000 a year. I paid it all through her freshman year, working overtime on weekends, skipping vacations, driving a truck with 140,000 miles on it, just so my daughter could walk around a campus that made her ashamed of my driveway. I sat there doing the math. I had already handed over $41,000 in purely voluntary grace, and I was about to do it again for her sophomore year. And 4 hours earlier, she'd called me a small, bitter man in a diner booth. Something in me just stopped bending. I didn't call her that night. I didn't call Kara either, which probably surprised them both, knowing how I usually handle things. Quiet, measured, give it a day, talk it through. Instead, I called Paula Castillo's office first thing the next morning. "James Wheeler," she said when she picked up, like no time had passed at all. "It's been a minute. Paula, I need you to walk me through something. The education clause from my decree, the flagship cap." There was a pause on the line, and then I heard her flipping through something. "You're still legally bound to that, yes." "Why? Is there an issue?" "No issue," I said. "I just want to make sure I understand exactly what I'm required to pay. To the dollar. You want to start paying less?" Did I? I sat with that question for a second. "I want to start paying correctly," I said. "Exactly what the law says. Not a dollar more." Paula didn't ask follow-up questions about why. She'd represented enough fathers to know that tone of voice doesn't come from nowhere. "All right," she said. "Let's get you compliant. Here's the thing nobody tells you about doing something out of hurt instead of rage. It's slower, quieter, and somehow it scares people more. If I'd called Emma screaming, if I'd cussed out Kara on the phone, if I'd shown up at that gated community in Southlake and pounded on Luke's front door, that's a story people expect. That's a story they can dismiss. Oh, he's just bitter. He's just an angry ex. What I did instead took me 3 days, a notary, and a stack of certified mail receipts. Step 1. I called the university's bursar office and requested the exact in-state cost of attendance documentation, cross-referenced with the decree language. Then I had my bank cut a certified check for $5,500, half of the $11,000 annual flagship cap, covering the upcoming semester to the exact penny. I mailed it with a cover letter, drafted by Paula, formally notifying the university registrar that I was no longer responsible party for any balance exceeding that amount. To the penny. Not a dollar more, not a dollar less. Exactly what the law required of me. Step 2. It was the second week of September, open enrollment season at my company. I logged into the benefits portal that Thursday night at my kitchen table, scrolled to dependent coverage and found Emma's name sitting there under my health and dental plan. She was 19, a legal adult, no longer a qualifying dependent under the plan's actual rules, something HR had quietly let slide for 2 years because nobody flagged it. I flagged it. Click. Coverage terminated, effective end of month. Step 3. I logged into my bank app and found the supplementary credit card, the one I'd set up years ago for emergencies, the one that had quietly become Emma's go-to for things that weren't emergencies at all. Coffee runs, concert tickets, a study abroad prep shopping trip to Nordstrom that ran $640 over a single weekend, which I'd paid without saying a word at the time. I called the bank. "I'd like to close this authorized user account." "Are you sure, sir? This card has been active for—" "I'm sure." The representative read me a confirmation number. I wrote it down on a sticky note and put it in the filing cabinet right next to the decree. 3 signatures. 3 phone calls. That's all it took to stop carrying weight that was never legally mine to carry in the first place. I didn't tell Emma. I didn't tell Kara. I figured they'd find out soon enough, and they did. What I did instead that following weekend surprised even me. I drove out to Bass Pro Shops off 121 and bought myself a fly fishing setup, a decent rod, a reel, waders, the whole rig. Something I'd wanted since I was a younger man and never let myself spend money on, because there was always a more important use for that $200. A tuition payment. A car repair. A birthday Kara insisted needed to be special. I booked 4 nights in a cabin outside Bozeman, Montana for late October. Flights, the whole thing. Paid in full with money that 2 weeks earlier would have gone toward an apartment my daughter was embarrassed to admit her father couldn't comfortably afford. For the first time in 19 years, I spent money on myself without doing math first. I didn't call Emma that whole month. She didn't call me either, which told me everything I needed to know about what kind of relationship 8 years of conditioning had actually built. A real daughter, hurt and confused, calls her dad even when she's angry. A daughter who's been taught her dad is the villain doesn't call at all. She just waits for the villain to fix things silently, the way villains in her story always eventually do. Except this time, I didn't. If you have been listening for a while, drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button while you're at it, and be sure you're subscribed. Now, let me tell you what was happening 25 minutes away, in a high-rise off North Central Expressway, while I was researching trout flies and pretending my chest didn't still ache every time I thought about that diner. Emma had moved into the Crest the first week of September. Luke, her mom's new husband, had signed as sole guarantor without blinking. Probably enjoyed signing it honestly the way some men enjoy writing a big check in front of an audience. Rooftop pool. 24-hour concierge. The whole resort fantasy. By the third week, she'd thrown a party. Not a small one. I heard about it later, secondhand, the way you hear about disasters, pieced together a little at a time, from people who weren't even fully sure what happened. 40, 50 people. Music loud enough that 2 units down filed noise complaints with the front desk before midnight. A broken railing on the pool deck. Someone's designer purse went missing and a fight broke out in the elevator lobby that security had to break up. And buried under all of it, the detail that would matter most. 3 of Emma's roommates weren't on the lease at all. She'd been quietly subletting 2 of the bedrooms to friends from her hometown, splitting the rent, never telling the building. Cash payments through an app, nothing on paper. A way to make the unaffordable feel affordable, the same trick people pull every day in cities they can't actually afford to live in. The building found out within a week. Property management pulled the access logs, cross-referenced the guest list against the lease, and discovered the unauthorized occupants almost immediately. A letter went out, certified just like mine had, initiating formal eviction proceedings. Unpaid rent penalties, lease violation fees, cleaning and damage charges from the party. The number on that first letter, $42,000. Bad, but not yet a 5-alarm fire. Here's where it got worse. Buried in the fine print of the lease Luke had signed, fine print he'd skimmed past with the easy confidence of a man who reads contracts for a living, and assumed his own contract couldn't touch him, was a joint and several liability clause. It meant Luke wasn't just on the hook for Emma's unpaid rent. He was on the hook for everything tied to that unit. The party damages. The pool deck railing. A guest's twisted ankle that had already turned into a liability claim with the building's insurance carrier, who was now refusing to cover any of it, citing the unauthorized subletting as a material breach voiding standard coverage. The building's legal team didn't bother sending the $42,000 letter to Emma a second time. They sent the real number, $150,000, directly to Luke Bentley. I didn't know any of this yet. I was 3 weeks out from a fishing trip in Montana, finally sleeping through the night for the first time in years, genuinely starting to believe that quiet, calm detachment might be the healthiest thing I'd ever done for myself. I had no idea that 25 minutes away, in a glass tower with a rooftop pool, a certified letter was about to land on a marble kitchen island in South Lake and blow apart a marriage built entirely on the idea that money solves everything. Luke Bentley didn't get rich by giving money away. He was about to remind everyone of that, including the 19-year-old girl who'd called him a real man over her own father. I was in Montana when the first crack happened. I didn't know it yet. I was knee-deep in a cold river outside Bozeman, watching a fly drift past a rock. Finally, thinking about nothing at all. I got back from that trip in early November, tanned a little, rested more than I'd been in years, and 3 voicemails were waiting on my phone. 2 from Kara. 1 from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be a process server's office. I didn't call back right away. I unpacked my waders, did a load of laundry, and made myself a plate of enchiladas from the place on Garland Road I'd been going to since before Emma was born. Only then did I sit down and listen. Kara's voice, tight and clipped. "James, we need to talk. It's about Emma. Call me back." Funny, I thought. She hasn't called me James in a tone like that since the divorce was finalized. Here's what I pieced together over the next few days, partly from Kara's increasingly frantic voicemails, partly from what came out later in a courtroom under oath. The first letter, the one about the eviction and the party damages, landed on Luke's desk first. $42,000. According to Kara, he actually laughed when he read it. Relieved. $42,000 was annoying, but it wasn't catastrophic. He called Kara, told her to handle it, and started drafting a settlement offer. He was already mentally writing it off as the cost of looking like the big shot dad. 2 days later, the second letter arrived, certified this time. This one referenced the joint and several liability clause he'd skimmed past when he signed the lease. This one demanded $150,000. Luke didn't laugh at that one. According to Kara, he went completely silent for almost a full minute. The way a man goes quiet when he realizes he's made a mistake that can't be blamed on anyone else. Then he started yelling. Emma had assumed, the way she'd assumed her whole short adult life, that money simply appeared when you needed it. That Luke would just write the check. He'd signed the lease himself, after all. He'd wanted to. He'd practically performed it, that smug nod through the diner window, like fatherhood was a contract he could simply outbid me on. But Luke Bentley hadn't built a commercial real estate empire by being generous. He'd built it by being precise about exactly what he was and wasn't legally exposed to. And it turned out, Kara wasn't. She told this part to me herself later in a hallway, but I'll get there. Luke had a prenuptial agreement. Ironclad, the kind drafted by people who bill $400 an hour and don't make mistakes. It stated, in language Emma had never bothered to ask about, that Luke's personal and business assets were entirely separate from Kara's, and that he bore zero financial liability for the debts, actions, or legal entanglements of Kara's children from a previous marriage. His own daughter, well, stepdaughter, wasn't even a financial blip he was contractually required to absorb. The fight that followed, according to what Kara later admitted in open court, happened in their kitchen in Southlake, the one with the waterfall marble island Emma used to post on social media like it was a personal accomplishment. You signed the lease, Luke. You can't just walk away from it. I signed it to make a point, Kara. I didn't sign it to bankroll a teenager who throws ragers and sublets rooms behind my back. She's my daughter. She's not mine. Read the prenup you insisted on 5 years ago because you didn't trust me with your money, remember? Funny how that cuts both ways. Emma apparently stood in that kitchen sobbing, watching the man she'd called a real winner in front of her biological father unravel into something cold and businesslike in real time. Kara told the court that Luke looked at Emma, 19 years old, mascara running, watching her entire identity collapse, and said, "You are a spoiled, liability-ridden brat, and you are jeopardizing my credit and my entire career. I want her out of my house, Kara. And if this isn't settled, I want a serious conversation about whether this marriage is even worth the headache." That's the man my daughter called a real winner. That's the upgrade. Kara, desperate and apparently broke. I learned later she'd lived almost entirely on an allowance from Luke for years, no income of her own, no savings under her name. Hired an aggressive family attorney and filed an emergency motion. They dragged me back into court, claiming financial abandonment, demanding I cover the $150,000 liability claim and the unpaid tuition balance from Emma's private university. I wasn't worried. Paula Castillo wasn't worried either. "You did everything by the book, James," she told me over the phone. "Better than by the book. You're going to be fine." The hearing was held in a county courtroom in downtown Dallas, the kind of room that smells like old carpet and bureaucracy, fluorescent lights buzzing soft overhead. I wore my good suit, the one I'd bought for Emma's high school graduation 5 years earlier. It still fit. I hadn't grown soft in 5 years, in more ways than one. Luke sat up front, looking irritated rather than nervous, like a man who'd been mildly inconvenienced by a parking ticket. Kara sat beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue before the hearing had even started, and I remember thinking, save it. Nobody's filming this for sympathy points. Kara's attorney went first, painting me, James Wheeler, logistics manager, Saturday brake pad changer, the man who'd voluntarily overpaid for his daughter's tuition for 3 straight years, as a cold, calculated deadbeat who'd abandoned his daughter financially the moment she needed him most. He used words like vindictive and punitive. I sat there with my hands folded, listening, not flinching. Let him talk. The numbers don't lie, even when people do. Then Paula stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She submitted 3 pieces of evidence laid out clean and simple on the table in front of the judge. First, my bank statements going back 3 years alongside the decree's flagship cap clause, proving I had paid the exact legal maximum required of me. And notably, far more than that for the 2 years prior, voluntarily before this dispute ever began. Second, the signed Crest lease agreement with Luke Bentley's signature highlighted in yellow on the guarantor line, dated months before any of this happened. Entirely voluntary. Entirely his own decision. Third, and this was the one that made the room go quiet, a printed transcript of text messages, including the diner exchange, where Emma had explicitly, in her own words, rejected my financial support, and stated that Luke was now her provider. The judge, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses pushed low on her nose, read through all 3 documents slowly. I watched her jaw tighten somewhere around page 2 of the texts. Good, I thought. Read it twice. Read the part where my daughter called me James instead of Dad. Before the judge ruled, Kara asked to speak. Her attorney looked like he wanted to object, but she stood up anyway, walked to the witness stand, and didn't read from notes. What came out of her wasn't a performance. I've known Kara for 23 years. I know what her performances sound like. This wasn't that. I was 40 years old, she said, voice cracking almost immediately, and terrified of becoming invisible. My friends were posting vacations I couldn't afford. My marriage felt small. Luke made me feel seen, important. I told myself I was doing what was best for Emma. I told myself James was holding us back. She looked down at her hands, but I knew. I knew he loved her. I just needed to believe I'd made the right choice. So I made my daughter hate him to make myself feel better about a decision I was already regretting. She looked up, finding me in the gallery. I destroyed my own child to protect my ego. The courtroom went still. Even the court reporter's typing seemed to pause. I'm sorry, she said, looking right at me now. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. But she's still your daughter. Please, please don't let my mistakes destroy her. 8 years. I thought about every birthday Emma hadn't called, every Father's Day text that came late, if it came at all, every comment about my truck, my budget, my small life. I didn't say anything. I didn't owe her absolution, and pity isn't the same thing as forgiveness. I just looked at her, long enough for her to understand that the silence was the answer, and turned back to face the judge. The judge took off her glasses and set them down, and when she spoke, she didn't address me at all. She looked straight at Luke. Mr. Bentley, you are a sophisticated businessman. You signed a binding legal contract to provide a luxury lifestyle for an adult student by your own admission to assert your financial superiority over her father. This court is not a rescue service for your ego when your contractual obligations become inconvenient. She turned a page. Mr. Wheeler has fulfilled the letter of the law and considerably more than that for several years prior. Motion denied. Case dismissed. Luke's jaw clenched. He didn't say a word, just stood, buttoned his jacket out of habit, and walked out without looking at Kara. The winner, leaving the courtroom alone. I stepped out into the hallway afterward, sliding my reading glasses back into my shirt pocket, feeling lighter than I had in months. Down the corridor, I could already hear it. Kara's voice, sharp and pleading, Luke's footsteps moving away from her, not toward her, already on his phone with someone about a property closing like nothing in that courtroom had touched him at all. And on a bench near the elevators, Emma, head in her hands, sobbing. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, and for a second I saw something in her face I hadn't seen since she was 11 years old. Pure, unfiltered need. No performance in it at all. Dad. Her voice cracked on the word. Dad. Not James. Please. The university's going to unenroll me. The tuition balance isn't paid, and Luke told Mom I can't stay at the house anymore. She paused, wiping her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about the diner. I didn't mean it. I was just... She stopped, looked down, and then quieter. I don't even know why I said those things. That's not true. I do know, because Mom told me that's who you were. Every day, for years, and I believed her because she was the one who stayed. She was the one who was there, and you were just gone. She looked up at me again. I didn't mean it, but I said it, and now I can't take it back. But please, Dad, you're my dad. You have to fix this. 19 years. I thought about the crayon Father's Day card I still had somewhere in a drawer. I thought about the packed lunches, and every dollar I'd quietly bled into a life that had called me small for it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I just looked at her with something closer to grief than anger. Emma, do you remember when you were 11, when I used to pick you up from school and you'd run to the truck and tell me everything about your day? You were my whole world. She nodded, crying harder. And then your mom left, and slowly you stopped talking to me the same way. You stopped calling me Dad. You told me I was a failure because I believed in living within my means and preparing for the unexpected. You told me Luke was a winner who knows how to provide. I paused. I took your advice, Emma. I stepped aside and let the winner provide for you. But he won't. He's throwing me out. Dad, he doesn't love me. I know. My voice stayed quiet. I spent 19 years building a foundation under your feet so you'd never have to know how harsh the real world feels. Your mother convinced you that foundation was a prison. So I opened the gate, Emma. You chose Luke's money over my love. Now you get to see what Luke's money looks like when it doesn't come with any love attached. I can't fix this for you, I said. Not because I don't love you. I do. I think I'll always love you, even on the days you make it hard. But I have nothing left to give right now. I emptied myself out for 19 years, and you handed me back an empty cup at a diner table in August. I straightened my jacket. I've got a flight to catch. Good luck, Emma. I turned and walked down that long hallway, my boots clicking on the tile, and I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear her crying fade with every step, mixing in with the sound of Kara still arguing uselessly with a man already 3 calls deep into his next deal. I pushed through the glass doors into the bright, ordinary Texas afternoon, and for the first time since that Wednesday at the diner, I felt the weight lift clean off my shoulders. 3 days later, I was on a plane again. Not to Montana this time. Just a short flight to visit an old buddy from high school in Austin. The kind of trip I'd never have taken a year earlier, because there was always somewhere more responsible for that money to go. Somewhere over East Texas, I pulled out my phone, scrolled back through old photos out of habit, and stopped on one from 9 years back. Emma, 10 years old, gap-toothed, holding up a Father's Day card she'd made in crayon. You're the best dad because you always come home. I looked at it for a long moment. I didn't text her, I didn't call. I didn't even type out a message and delete it, the way I used to in the early days of the divorce, when I still believed talking could fix things. This time, I just looked at the picture, remembered the little girl who made it, and let myself miss her without needing to rescue her. I closed the phone, slid it into my pocket, and looked out the window as the ground fell away beneath the wing. For the first time in years, I just breathed. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from. I will see you on the next one.